Hi everyone, so in this video I want to introduce a technique that we can use for certain types of solving quadratic equations problems. So let's say we're given this problem 8x squared minus 48x plus 40 equals 0. So last week we learned that we can solve these types of equations by factoring. So let's factor 8x squared minus 48x plus 40. So I use the Xbox method, so let's do that. So 8x squared goes here, 40 goes here, then let's multiply these, and then we're creating the x. So 8 times 40 might take some time, but this is 320x squared, and then on the bottom is negative 48x. Okay, so I want you to look at these numbers and realize, wow, these numbers are kind of big. And to figure out what two numbers multiplies to 320 and adds to negative 48, that might not be easy, or it's doable, but maybe it's not obvious. And maybe it takes a while for you to figure out what those two numbers are. So the question, the motivation behind the technique that I'll show is there an easier way to maybe simplify this to make the question a little easier? So let's redo this. And the motivation is see if there's an easier way to do this problem. Okay, so let's say we don't want to deal with these big numbers. So what can we do? So I want you to notice these numbers 8, negative 48, and 40. It turns out that you can actually divide a common factor so that you can you can factor each of these numbers. So what is the greatest common factor of 8, negative 48, and 40? It's actually, you can factor out an 8. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write 8 parentheses x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals 0. And why can I do that? Well, 8 times 1 is 8x. 8 times negative 6x is negative 48x. 8 times 5 is 40. So it turns out we can factor out the 8 so that we have smaller numbers. And so x squared minus 6x plus 5, that's a lot more doable to factor. And so now that we have this, we can use the rules of algebra to divide 8 on both sides. So when we divide 8 on both sides, the 8 goes away. The left side just becomes x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals 0. And it is 0 because 0 divided by any non-zero number is 0. So now all we need to do is factor out and solve this equation, x squared minus 6x plus 5. So let's use the Xbox method. X squared, 5, multiply these, let's the x, 5x squared, negative 6x. Okay, what two numbers multiplies to 5x squared and adds to negative 6x? That's negative 5x, negative 1x, or just negative x. And then let's put these in the boxes. Okay, now let's fill in the outside. What times what is x squared? That's x times x. X times negative 5, negative 1. Okay, so now that we have this, we can rewrite x squared minus 6x plus 5 as x minus 5 times x minus 1. So turning x squared minus 6x plus 5 into x minus 5 times x minus 1. And then we use the zero product property to finish this problem. Then if two numbers multiply to 0, that means one of these parentheses must be 0. So we're going to make two equations. X minus 5 equals 0. X minus 1 equals 0. And then we're going to solve by using rules of algebra again. So minus 5, the opposite of that is plus 5. Add 5 on both sides. X equals 5. Add 1 on both sides. X equals 1. So as you do these problems, when you make the Xbox method, think about whether you want to deal with these really big numbers, and if you don't, try to think if there's any shortcut we can use first before we solve the quadratic equation. So we can factor out the 8 to make it 8 times x squared minus 6x plus 5, divide 8 on both sides. All we need to do is solve x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals 0. So x equals 5 and x equals 1.